NASA, the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, is a government agency that runs on an annual budget that has to be approved by Congress each fiscal year. There is a controversy over whether or not NASA should continue to be funded or they should let private sector projects, just like Boeing, Lockheed Martin, etc., should take over aeronautics and aerospace. The science of the atmosphere and objects capable of airflight. Companies like Boeing and Ford Lockheed Martin sometimes act as contractors. Companies hired to accomplish certain tasks for NASA, which means that the companies use its own resources to work on a certain aspect for NASA. My major claim is the private sector can do projects similar to NASA's more efficiently. My support claims are the private sector can do projects similar to NASA's with fewer expenses, can implement projects more quickly than a government agency, and the private sector will be able to focus more on independent projects without being a contractor to NASA. My first support statement is the private sector can do projects similar to NASA with fewer expenses. Money can be wasted through changing leadership in the United States of America. Government agencies like NASA have to wait for their budgets to be approved by Congress, and sometimes it will not suffice for projects NASA might have already been working on. As reported by the Christian Science Monitor, George W. Bush's project Constellation was not included in the budget for NASA during the Obama administration in 2009. The money that had been used on the project had gone away since it wasn't approved in the budget because of the change in leadership. Not only can the American legislative system cause more expenses, but it can also slow down the process of innovation. Which brings me to my second point. The private sector can, according to Cengage Learning, implement projects more quickly than the government agency. The American system of government is fairly slow process due to the way it's created by the founding fathers. Government agencies like NASA have to wait for their budget to be approved by Congress and might have to receive more funding to carry out a project. This slows down NASA's ability to innovate and create. Private businesses' budget is separate from that of the nation, so it does not have to wait for approval. Without the funding of NASA, some of the national focus on space travel may be lost, but the private sector will be able to focus more on individual projects. My final support is the point is the private sector will be able to focus more on independent projects without being a contractor to NASA if NASA loses its funding. If companies no longer contract for NASA, they will lose some business, but the gain is that these companies will be able to put the resources into their own projects. Not only material resources will be allocated more efficiently for the business, but the thinking section of the industry will be able to focus more on innovations of its own to contribute to society. In conclusion, the private sector is more efficient than NASA because it does not have to wait for Congress to approve its budget, change directions of focus because of change of leadership, and has the ability to focus its thinking power efficiently without NASA.
All right, well, you've got a clear label of what the proposition is and an excellent setup of what the supporting points are, and no support for any of those supporting points. There's no examples except for the Constellation program. There's no budget comparisons. There's no illustration of projects that have been delayed. You explain the theory on each of the supporting points that you present, and you keep those points organized, but you don't document any reason to believe that your conclusions are valid. We don't even have the kinds of illustrations that would tie this into reality. This all sounds incredibly hypothetical. If you could show, for instance, that there was a comparable program that private industry was able to complete in a relatively short amount of time and save money on, and then have a comparable NASA program, then I've got some basis for making an inference here. But all I've got is your assertion, and I don't even know what the illustrations would be that you're using for this. On the first point, like I said, the only evidence that you had was the example of the Constellation program that wasn't funded. So we know that that one program went away. Did NASA stop functioning? Did they not have any additional programs that were going on at the time? That was a cut in a single program that was going to be pretty expensive and involve a lot of money over a number of years. But there's no evidence that it says that it delayed or hurt anything else, except that they made the decision not to do this. The idea that private industry is going to be able to do the same thing as the Constellation program, where's the proof on that? And I don't hear any support for this idea or concept on even a hypothetical example on that particular point. So it just feels like it's a lot underdeveloped in the evidence department, even though it's well organized. And I thought you had a good summary of what the argument was supposed to be, but there's just not any proof on that particular argument. Your delivery also hinders the presentation a bit because you're mostly delivering the speech without a lot of variety in your voice. There's way too much reading, and you need to engage the audience a little bit more. The hands in the pocket, looking down, reading in a single tone is not going to enhance your credibility. You want to engage the audience. Tell them what you think about this, explain it to them, and talk to them, not talk at them. And that's kind of what we're getting in the presentation here. All right, thank you.